We're getting down to it in part one of the week 6 preview here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom. Philadelphia licking their wounds, no longer undefeated, traveling not that far to play against the Giants on Thursday night. Let's talk the Eagles side and can they get Saquon Barkley going? Like,
Mm.
it's this vacillation of like AJ
Yep.
Brown's doing nothing. Now let's feed AJ Brown. And I believe that was a mistake against Denver. Do they kind of do that overcorrection and go back to Saquon and give him a proper amount of touches on Thursday?
Yeah, we're a part of this journey with Nick Sirianni, and we saw the team was so run heavy. AJ Brown speaking out, and then they swing wildly back to pass heavy, and in the end, it doesn't work. So what changes now? Saquon Barkley is also on the injury report with a knee. They say general soreness, but is there something there to why they let up? Why Sirianni bizarrely lurched, 6 carries and also only 2 runs for Jalen Hurts. These are important elements in your offense. And in general, the offense is an issue. They have some injuries on the offensive line. Lane Johnson has a recurring stinger. Landon Dickerson now has an injury. He's going to miss a couple of games. But still, this team has, for NFL, good depth on the offensive line. And you would expect them to be, I think they're like 30th in offense by some metric. So they got to get this figured out against the Giants, who have that rising pass rush, but certainly because of their secondary, you're going to play Devontae Smith, you're going to play AJ Brown, you're probably going to play Dallas Goedert. Jalen Hurts hasn't been elite for fantasy this year, but against the Giants defense, yeah, I think you're probably going to play him. Maybe some tougher decisions than you think with some quarterbacks that came after him that have come on. But that's where the Eagles are in their journey. The Giants, cease. It feels like every week now we're like, is this Brian Dable's job on the line? Or is ownership going to give him and Shane another year? And is it based on how Jackson Dart plays?
Yeah, how does Jackson Dart play and how much help does he get? And does he go to the receivers that we wanted him to go to? Because fantasy GMs are like, hey, more Wandale Robinson, more Darius Slayton. They're still asking those same questions.
Yeah, we had 1 week of triumph, and then it looked like they were off to a good start. Jackson Dart was off to a good start against the Saints, and then they had 3 fumbles, 2 interceptions. The interceptions weren't terrible. They weren't Geno Smith interceptions, but still, you're probably not going to have Darius Slayton. So, yeah, targets for Wandale Robinson, Theo Johnson, in Jackson Dart, a tougher defensive matchup. Philly did basically put the clamps on Denver for 3 quarters last week. So you're not necessarily looking at Dart as a streamer, but maybe he can distribute the ball to Wandale Robinson, to Theo Johnson. And Jalen Hyatt's going to get a shot. Maybe Bo Collins, who kind of quit on a route, the undrafted free agent that was one of the interceptions last week. They get more opportunity with Slayton out. But you have to think this is a Cam Scadaboo game. He had a fumble last week. He had some fumble problems in college. But you can run on Philadelphia. That's what Sean Payton and J.K. Dobbins eventually showed, that sticking with the run is a good strategy. So I think it's going to be a Cam Scadaboo game. It's probably going to be a very entertaining game, in part, Cease, because it seems like these teams are on a shoot or ladder as their seasons continue to change their complexion.
How about we go to London, an early one for Denver and the Jets, and Denver riding high off that Philly win, staying in the middle of nowhere because Sean Payton wants no distractions. Don't drop this one. And yeah, there's kind of a formula. Feed Cortland Sutton, feed J.K. Dobbins. Everyone else, that's in our what the heck flex category. Maybe even more of an Ingram going forward.
Right.
Let's watch.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. You have a true number 1 receiver. And remember when Sean Payton said, you guys can figure out who the number 2 receiver is. He was telling us the blueprint of this offense. And also, like you said, J.K. Dobbins, the Cecil week 16 of Cecil, I was thinking about it. I'm like, there's a Lassie bark, and then there's like the Cecil, like a little twinkle in his eye. Like when you said, I'll give him 6 weeks for RJ Harvey. I don't know what the heck flex to see if maybe that 6 week is the magic week, but it's J.K. Dobbins backfield. And then you mentioned Ingram, and he had a couple of big plays last week in the comeback. And you're facing a Jets defense that gave up 2 touchdowns to Ferguson last week, 2 touchdowns to Darren Waller the week before that. So yeah, Evan Ingram is a streamer and maybe somebody that can get some momentum. Even Bo Nix is a good streamer this week, because on the other side, you have Aaron Glenn at 0-5, and it's not just 0-5, it's the way it's been 0-5, because he's a defensive coach, and it's slipping away. It feels like it's slipping away, and people are mentioning one and done. Notice I'm talking a lot about perceptions, but perceptions are a reflection of where these teams are in their trajectory. Where's Denver in their trajectory? See, it's like you said, Sean Payton right now is probably like, see what happens when we all buy in. And now you get to go to London. It's like a vacation. It's like a reward because you get to play this Jets team.
Yeah, play this Jets team, but you can run against Denver. Something Philadelphia was refusing to figure out. All right, well, Brees Hall, here we go. And Auntie Chill, Mason Taylor. You can't stop tight ends in Denver either. So Brees Hall, Mason Taylor, yes. Everyone else, even Garrett Wilson on pass
Right.
or 10, probably no.
Right. I mean, you probably still have to play Wilson because one way or the other, I mean, if there's garbage time again this week, then Garrett Wilson, you have to have a pretty stacked team to be putting Garrett Wilson on your bench. But you're right, Cease, that from a DFS standpoint, or you're forecasting this game, it makes it even more likely that Mason Taylor is going to continue to get targets, 12 targets, 9 catches last week. And then that's it for the passing game. But it might work out for the Jets because you said the weakness for the Broncos you want to attack is the one thing the Jets can do. Right? I mean, we saw Justin Fields look kind of like he was making steps against the Steelers defense. Well, week 1 aberration because he was not able to pass against the Bills. He was not able to pass last week against the Cowboys until the game was out of hand. And the Broncos will sweep the leg. I mean, the Nick Bonito and Cooper and company, they will tease, taunt, hopefully not because that's 15 yards, but otherwise take advantage of the fact that you can render Justin Fields really powerless in the passing game. They can't really run an NFL passing game, certainly not against a defense like Denver. So you could see a strong Denver defense. And then I think what you might see here, Cease, is people, if you're playing fantasy football, you're not watching the Jets and you're looking at Justin Fields' stats, you might get one idea because he's successful for fantasy football. But when you see how difficult it is for the Jets offense to function, if the Broncos force them to pass, because the other thing is with Brees Hall and Justin Fields, maybe they only have to pass 12 or 15 or 18 times, and we don't see it. So game script's really important here. And Denver to not lose that edge, because on defense, the Jets are going to test it.
Oh boy. Next one is what's the perception of Arizona? Pause. What's the perception of Indianapolis? Pause. And they face each other. Arizona side first, and can they just not be embarrassing?
Yeah, see, the theme that emerges as we look at each one of these teams is 5 weeks in, and it's a little different than we expected. And how are they dealing with that? And how much of that have they created? How much of that has been circumstance? And how are they going to respond? You're going to see this theme continue to come up as we look at the week 6 games. And for Arizona, we've seen teams lose games they should have won. But the way that the Cardinals really like regurgitated a victory out of their digestive system, and the Titans are like, yes, we'll take that because that's where they're at in their journey. And it's Kyler Murray, right? Teams take on the personality of their coach and their quarterback. With Kyler Murray, where does that leave you? I'm not trying to be harsh on him as a player. He's a warrior as a player, but as a leader, I'm not sure. Jonathan Gannon is getting fined by his team for getting physical with one of his players who made a terrible mistake that angered the gods. You saw what happened to both the Colts and the Cardinals when one of their players flipped the ball at the goal line. Boy, the football gods don't like that. Oh, you're going to encourage their anger. So how does this team respond? Going to face an Indianapolis team, Cease, that, it's AFC South is kind of funny. Like Indianapolis and Jacksonville are like, hey, we're good teams. We don't know when y'all are going to notice, but we're actually good teams. And going on the road, well, how's Kyler Murray going to respond? Because he's going to have to throw to keep up with this juggernaut Colts offense. So that means Marvin Harrison. That means Trey McBride. Those connections better be clicking if they're going to stay in this game, or it could go downhill real fast. Yes, Michael Carter can catch a lot of passes in a PPR league, give you some value. Bam Knight may get an opportunity. Now, how are they going to respond with DeMercado? We saw on the other side of this, Adonai Mitchell. Isn't it fascinating, too, that they're the two teams that
Right.
they happen facing each other, right? DeMercado, well, we only saw Adonai Mitchell get 6 snaps last week. Is that how he plays an important role as a third down back? But is that how Jonathan Gannon is going to handle this? The public nature of this? What is this team, Cease? They almost got beat by the Panthers. They've gotten big leads on teams and then just not finish the game, like flipping the ball away at the goal line. Which are we looking at? The run to get free, or the true nature of this team is that they're losers. It's going to be fascinating. Certainly, the Colts look like winners.
Right coach, wrong quarterback. That's who they are. And DeMarcado and AD Mitchell can exchange jerseys,
Right.
and
Support
Indy
club.
can run all over them. That's it. That's the Daniel Jones Indianapolis Colts. Lots of Jonathan Taylor, quite a bit of Tyler Warren as well. That young phenom there to get the win at home.
Yeah, that's the thing. They called their shot with Tyler Warren, and that is working out beautifully. Daniel Jones, it's a very strong play. Cease, I got a question from someone, Daniel Jones or Jaden Daniels. And like, that's just where we're at. Like, just pause for a second and say, I don't know I'm the expert, so I'm going to tell you, right now who to play. But that's where we're at with Daniel Jones right now. They scored 6 offensive touchdowns last week. Arizona, is their defense good? Again, I don't know. Like, they're good for 3 quarters sometimes. They were good against San Francisco and Mac Jones, who looks pretty good. This is a road team, so maybe Indianapolis is going to have a good game. Jonathan Taylor is riding high. I'm certainly not going to talk anybody out of playing Daniel Jones this week. Pittman, just watch the practice reports about his hamstring. He's consistent. With this other role, I don't know when Alec Pierce is going to get out of concussion protocol. Mitchell maybe works his way out of the doghouse. Ashton Doolin can do some things, but it's maybe more Josh Downs. You're looking at Josh Downs as a more viable play here. And for Indianapolis, again, they're just getting used to this reality that this is a good team on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, good team on both sides of the ball. And if the playoffs started today, they'd have a bye.
Yeah.
Chargers and Miami Dolphins up next. Chargers were just picking apart that ground game like we did on the waiver wire, Bloom. Who's it going to be? Helping out Justin Herbert when he's handing off the ball? We're fixing to find out.
And again, Cease, here's that theme. 2 weeks in, I told you, Jim Harbaugh, I told you Justin Herbert's Hall of Famer. Greg Roman can old dog learn a new trick, right? Everything is, they lost Rashawn Slater in the it's going to be fine. A couple more injuries on the offensive line, all of a sudden it's not fine. And all of a sudden people are starting to bring up those Andrew Luck stats. Andrew Luck, I hope Andrew Luck is really remembered as a quarterback who never got to show, speaking of great Hall of Famer, because when we bring up Andrew Luck, Cease, what are we always bringing up? How many sacks he took, how many hits he took, and then the outcome of his career, right? We're starting to bring up those stats now with Justin Herbert. And where are we? This is a matchup. Yeah, Herbert's hurting, but the Dolphins are hurting worse right now. So what's going to win out? Because, boy, we thought the Washington defense was hurting. But last week they put the hurting on Herbert. So he's one of those interesting quarterbacks. But the matchup and the targets he has, you're weighing him against some of these other names, but knowing that they have no momentum right now. Can the Miami Dolphins, we've seen this with some bad defenses, give them that opportunity to create momentum, partially because, again, with Marion Hampton, it's certainly back to being a Justin Herbert offense. Quinn Johnston looking for a bounce back game after his fumble. Hopefully you get time to throw downfield to him. Keenan Allen, of course, Ladd McConkey, of course, all these guys are in your lineup. As far as the backfield, we saw Rico Dowdle just eviscerate this defense last week. So what the heck flexes? I don't know. I think that we also might just see that this is going to be kind of like Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, where it's like there's a running game. They do some pretenses of running the ball, but really this is a Justin Herbert offense, hopefully matched up against the Miami defense. It can be one where it's a successful day. And see, on the Miami side, you feel like we talked a lot about the Tyreek Hill Tua Tagovailoa relationship and mending it and things like that. But do you feel like Tua was maybe a little more relaxed last week?
A little bit, or maybe a lot of bits. This week now at home against the Chargers team that they feel like they've got a chance against, Bloom. How does that affect their performance on Sunday?
Yeah, plucky underdogs. And you've got Darren Waller, who's regained his old form. He's in your lineup for sure. You got Jalen Waddle reeling in the deep ball. He's in your lineup for sure. Tua is even a quarterback to super flex. We saw 3 touchdowns last week by Washington, 2 from Bill McCroskey Merritt. Only 1 accounted by Jaden Daniels. But 2, it's a mercurial run game. Part of the reason you may like 2 a little more is because, again, Devin Achane. And I have to say hats off to his. He's one of those. He's one of those size of the fight and the dog kind of players. It's not just speed. He's not just a scat back. And you saw he's also not just a running back as a receiver. He looks like a wide receiver. So Tua is going to continue to take advantage of him. So you have those 3 players filling that void in terms of the offensive tactics and game plan, but also, maybe it was just Carolina, but you saw a Miami offense that looked more comfortable, even they couldn't run the ball last week against Carolina.
Yeah, last week is this week, and this week is next week, and 4 games down and 4 games to go. Did you figure that out? Patriots and Saints. Patriots figuring it out, right? Feeling good about that win over Buffalo, traveling to New Orleans. They should be feeling pretty good about their chances. And I guess you can just fumble the ball in New England and still get chances.
Yeah, lots to sort through here, Cease. I'll tell you what the headline is here. This is a really fascinating week to look at, like, where the narrative is, right? Because what's the narrative around the league with the primetime game, the road win against Buffalo? The Patriots got themselves a quarterback. Drake May. And we can go back to the draft. What's fascinating or fun to revisit, Cease, is at the number 3 pick, they had people knocking on their door, right? Minnesota, the Giants, like, we want Drake May. They could have done kind of similar to what Cleveland did with Travis Hunter, where it's like, well, no, we're going to trade down. We're going to go and push some of this capital in the future. This is a long-term rebuild. But they stuck with Drake May, and wow, just wow. People really noticing. See, I saw one quote, I can't remember who it was, saying, does Drake May play like this every week? Because they got to see him because it was prime time. So that's where we're at. Now for fantasy, Drake May had a down week because Ramondre Stevens scored the touchdowns, as you alluded to, Cease. But still, against New Orleans down here, I mean, Drake May is a fantasy quarterback one, and he's got a high ceiling every week. It's not resulting, well, now it's resulting in Stephon Diggs, who's had back-to-back amazing weeks. Another person who's brought pain into the lives of New Orleans Saints fans. It's a long list.
Yeah.
So you're going to keep Stephon Diggs in, but otherwise, it's a cast of different players. Drake May is not creating value. Otherwise, although he does create value, you mentioned the backfield. Now, Antonio Gibson goes down with an ACL tear. So now it's Stevenson, Henderson. It's a little easier to want to at least plug in both of them as a flex. But as of right now, Ramondre Stevenson scores the 2 touchdowns. He fumbled last week too. Mike Vrabel, I mean, this is a masterclass in your guys have to contribute, so you don't just flush them. I mean, this is kind of the thing with Adonai Mitchell and Amari DiMercato, right? I mean, you can't just say, well, now, you're banished, you're exiled, because they're still an important player, and Ramondre Stevenson made some important plays, and he's the guy that can be there in the passing game. He's got the chemistry with Drake May. Trevion Henderson hasn't gotten there yet. Again, earlier in the season, there was a play they did in practice with Henderson, the biggest play that Stevenson had in the passing game. It was a play they practiced with Henderson, but in the game, it was Stevenson. So, it's going to be interesting to watch this. And what makes it interesting to watch these, and by the way, there's Hunter Henry. You can always throw him in as a what the heck tight end. What it makes this interesting to watch, remember, this team rebuilt their offensive line in the offseason. This is an ascending offense. We're not talking about this as a fantasy bonanza offense, but it's getting there.
It's getting there. And what are we talking about with the Saints?
Taysom Hill. Come on, man. It's always Taysom Hill. Even if it's not Taysom Hill, it's Taysom Hill. No, he takes the edge off of Alvin Kamara. You're still keeping Kamara in as a flex play, but that's where we're at with Kamara. You kind of tempted to play Rashid Shaheed now. There's more balance in the offense, but that means maybe things open up downfield. 87-yard touchdown from Rashid Shaheed. There's always these underrated players lists. Rashid Shaheed remains on the underrated player list, partially because Spencer Rattler wasn't getting him in the ball deep until last week. So you might play him. You're going to play Olave. You're probably not playing Juwan Johnson. He did catch the one nice pass that Taysom Hill threw last week. You're not necessarily playing Taysom Hill, but who knows? Because Taysom Hill is still bound to have a 100-yard, 2-touchdown game any game now. So at least it's fun down here in New Orleans. That's the one thing we know how to do.
Yeah, fun and fun. Not fun, Cleveland and Pittsburgh. With Joe Flacco traded away. We'll talk about his new team in part 2. Now Cleveland is fully Dylan Gabriel's team until Shadur Sanders takes over, and then Dylan Gabriel gets the job back. Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, oh boy. Throw it up and pray. Throw it up and pray.
Cease. You and I were both convenience store clerks. What's up, Kevin Smith, right? We were both clerks, right? Right? Isn't this storyline like something that like one of those people, wonderful people that would come in and like drink their beers out of paper bags and when maybe like talk sports or politics with you or something would come up with like, I know, the Bengals are going to trade for Joe Flacco. That's what I was going to do. Here we are. The NFL is drunk, really. And Dylan Gabriel, it worked out. The 4 quarterback plan actually worked out for them because they traded 2 of them. It actually worked. They got they traded the Lions 6th-round picks. They actually got the Browns got pretty good return on Joe Flacco. The Steelers defense is rested. They're healthier now. I think you're going to see closest to the full power Steelers defense, which looked very good against Carson Wentz going into the bye. So Dylan Gabriel's got to face that defense. Or is it Quinshon Judkins? Is this a game where the Browns rely on the Steelers' conservative nature on offense and their good defense to keep this like a 13-10 game? That was the score of the game they won against the Packers. Quinshon Judkins touched the ball 35 times. We'll see. You might play David Njoku, who was back from the dead last week, or maybe Harold Fannin, who also scored, but you're not throwing downfield. You're not playing Jerry Jeudy. And Cleveland, they're back at the beginning of another long journey at quarterback, and they're facing a Steelers team right now that where are they at in their narrative seats? They're rested. They're feeling good. They're the favorite to win their division.
Yeah, favorite to win the division and go to the wild card round and get bounced. Steelers side of things. That sounds about right. Well, it sounds about right. This team built to win it all?
Yeah.
This team built to win a game in the playoffs. All right.
Right.
Beat up on Cleveland at home. You can do that, Steelers. Congrats.
Yeah. No, it's fair. I mean, you're facing Dylan Gabriel is one thing when you're facing Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, or Lamar Jackson. Maybe some of these other quarterbacks talking about Drake May and Trevor Lawrence. I don't know. But this is going to be a conservative Steelers game plan, and it's perfect, right? What a nice couple, the Steelers offense and the Browns defense, because the Steelers want to be conservative anyway, and boy, against Myles Garrett, you especially want to be conservative. So it's going to, maybe some wrinkles coming out of the bye. I know Mike Tomlin saying, well, Darnell Washington's out there because we're playing a 4-3 team, and we need that size and power on the offensive line, and it worked. Steelers winning in the trenches in week 4, winning Steelers with way. Maybe some passes to Darnell Washington. There's no fantasy implications here. Just speaking as a Steelers fan. Calvin Austin the third still banged up. We're going to see more Scotty Miller, not Roman Wilson. That pick's not working out. But they have found good ways to put DK Metcalf's speed in play, even though they're not throwing downfield. He had a long touchdown. He had a long gain earlier in the year on a wide receiver screen. You have to think that he's going to get enough targets to be worth a wide receiver 3 flex play. The important thing for fantasy here is watching the Kenneth Gainwell, Jalen Warren split. Warren's back at practice, but Gainwell showed that maybe this should be a 50-50 split. And if they're winning in the trenches, and I know the Browns are pretty good against the run, don't get me wrong, but the Steelers might be able to put the lean on them if they're getting this defense tired out because they're holding Dylan Gabriel to short drives. See, again, this sounds like old school Steelers football. Mike Tomlin, kind of like Sean Payton, is right now saying, see?
Speaking of wrinkles, Dallas and Carolina up next. And Javonte Williams running wild, right? Running wild against Carolina. Okay, yeah, Cowboys plan seems like it can work, especially with that ground game support from Javonte Williams.
Right? Again, here's another one where we check in. Ha, 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 Brian Schottenheimer, they did it. Jerry Jones, speaking of the wrinkles, did that joke hire. Ha, 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 they traded away Micah Parsons. Well, maybe they have the last laugh as this team looks like a good team right now. And Dak Prescott is playing as well as he's played in his whole career. Jake Ferguson, to put a number 1 fantasy tight end so far in a great matchup. George Pickens, even in Sauce Gardner shutting him down, he still got one in. There's that last laugh. Ryan Flournoy, who's behind Jalen Tolbert. I mean, these guys are deep what the heck flexes, but that's just how good this offense is right now. We'll see about Kevontae Turpin when he's back out there. Javonte Williams in peak form. Javonte Williams playing as well as he's played in his entire career right now. Offensive line. See, again, it's offensive line injuries. We're not talking about the Cowboys' offensive line injuries, right? So different things, there are different factors at play, but all those factors are converging. Now, Carolina's coming off a win. Congratulations, you beat Miami. But Dallas is a good team, and Carolina doesn't look like they can beat good teams.
Yeah, and then what do fantasy GMs do? Because you're like, can Rico Dowdle do it again?
Right.
Not 200. But yeah, that's where fantasy lenses are going to be focused. That and Ted McMillan.
Rico Dowdle, see, we talk about revenge games. Like, this really is like, I mean, it's Jerry Jones. Who could inspire more in terms of, Micah Parsons didn't do too much in his revenge game, right? Well, he's happy. He's paid. Rico Dowdle's not paid. So maybe, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Forrest Whitaker. It's almost like last week he was playing like it was the revenge game against Jerry. And we'll see if Chuba Hubbard's going to play. But yeah, Dowdle, I don't know how you could put him in the bench unless Hubbard is back. But I don't think that's going to happen because of how well he played. Now, it's a good matchup on paper. But again, it was a good matchup on paper against Justin Fields. Bryce Young can do a little more than Justin Fields, certainly to Tedero McMillan. We're waiting for that ceiling game. Is this when we get a ceiling game from him? Watch to see if Jalen Coker's back. I know they got him in his practice window. Xavier Legette had a nice touchdown last week. Does he continue to contribute? This should be a game. It might be a game where Rico Dowdle puts a stamp on it. More likely, Bryce Young is going to have to do more. Is that going to expose the problems again, or is it going to create some hope for the Panthers?
Some hope out there for the Panthers and some wins out there for the Jaguars. Wow. Holy cow. Seattle against Jacksonville, the final game we're going to talk about, part 1 of the week 6 preview. And all right, let's fast forward to the Seattle side so we can start praising Liam Cohen and Duval.
Duval. Seattle, I have was my first note, Cease. Suddenly Sam. Because here's another narrative journey thing. Now, I know he lost the quarterback duel with Baker Mayfield, the late interception by Levante David, but everybody's now openly asking, did Minnesota pick the wrong quarterback? Should they have just kept Sam Darnold? Because Sam Darnold getting over, and Cease, it's about that journey. The last 2 weeks of the season, we saw Sam Darnold exposed, right? This is all you have to do. He sees ghosts. Wore my Ghostbuster shirt from yesterday. And now on Seattle's offensive line, ask Geno Smith how bad it is. Wow. So, of course, Jackson Smith and Jigba is fueled to being an elite fantasy receiver. Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, A.J. Barner of interest, certainly in a week. There's only 2 teams on bye. But with Sam Darnold playing like this, we have to consider them, or at the very least, keep them on our roster. We have Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet in one of the most annoying fantasy football situations where it really is a split in terms of fantasy value, that they're both just like flex plays, running back 2s. Certainly on the road against Jacksonville, you don't see a ceiling game. You don't see them running wild. Because, this is Jacksonville's moment, Cease. After everything we saw in week 5, in the end, it was what they say, Trevor Bankfield or something like that. It's Trevor's moment. And what is he going to do to build on that?
Pick his nose. Stumble his way to a touchdown. Yeah. What else is Trevor going to do? Throw it to Travis Hunter?
Ooh.
Kids figuring it out. They're figuring out him. And Liam Cohen now, all the talk of the talk out there is the Jaguars. I like it, Bloom.
I like it too, especially with Trevor Lawrence. And isn't that a microcosm of a career? You can stumble more than once even, but if you just stay aware, stay frosty, as my dear friend says, then, hey, good things can still happen. And with Trevor Lawrence, you're starting to consider him now. You don't want to get too out over your skis. Seattle's defense has been not necessarily great statistically, but still a tough out. But then we saw what Baker Mayfield did. That was Baker Mayfield. But do you get Brian Thomas Jr. more involved now? I mean, you're certainly inclined to put him in the lineup after the big catch he had to help set up the game-winning touchdown. Travis Hunter, a little further down the list, but we know we saw the talent on the run after catch for 2 guys. We saw the talent on the extended play. And those things create momentum. Trevor Lawrence now, when the play breaks down, where's Travis Hunter, right? Because Travis Hunter is not a big receiver, but he plays big at the catch point. And he plays big in big moments. And that's what's exciting with Brenton Strange out, who was the leading receiver in receptions for this team. Now you're even more inclined to put Thomas or Hunter in there. And then that maybe could unlock some of Trevor Lawrence's fantasy upside. You've got Diami Brown and Parker Washington playing some supporting roles. Hunter Long has 2 touchdowns this year. A little tougher road for Travis Etienne against Seattle. But again, if the passing game gets going downfield, that can loosen up things for the running game and get things going, because it's great. See, not just that Jacksonville announced themselves with this win, but they did it at home. They're playing at home on the following Sunday. There's going to be some great energy in that stadium. And we know a lot of Jags fans that have been waiting for this moment, and let's enjoy it. Let's not talk about them losing in the playoffs like you did with the Steelers, all right?
Ha. Well, I think Jacksonville would win in the postseason.
Maybe.
The Steelers
over the Steelers. That's your first round matchup, right?
Perhaps, yeah. Let's wrap up today's program. Be back tomorrow with part 2 of the Week 6 preview. It is the Audible here on YouTube. You're listening on your podcast service. Thank you all. 20 years of the Audible. He's Sigmund Bloom. I'm Cecil Lammey. We are the Audible. Follow Sigmund on the socials at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.